You're listening to the Bombastic Podcast with Andrew Ellis on Inside Arkansas.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Bombastic Podcast presented by Inside Arkansas and hosted by Andrew Ellis. I'm joined by a very special guest on today's program. I'm here with Noah Darling, who does a great job covering college baseball, really the national landscape, SEC, some Midwest baseball. He's all over the country covering college baseball as well as anybody for College Baseball Central. We appreciate you for being here with us, Noah. We got to get the elephant out of the room. You picked Arkansas to win the national championship, and I feel like we have to consider you an ally here on the Bombastic Podcast. So how are we doing?
Well, number one, Andrew, I'm doing great. It's a Friday, and I don't know if you've seen, about 20 people on Twitter said the same thing. It's the last Friday without college baseball until mid-June, and who knows? We might have a rain delay in Omaha, and we might have baseball that Friday. But it's just a great time. And you mentioned Arkansas. I happen to be very high on the team that you cover, and you do a great job over here. And I know Arkansas fans, if you give them a little crumb, they'll take the whole slice of bread from you. And some of the best fans in the sport. And I was looking at my early routine and where I'm going to be across the country, and I thought, why don't I maybe head down to Arkansas next week? So I haven't locked it in yet, but I'm looking at it, and hopefully we can get that national championships tour started off right.
Hell yeah, man. So you thinking about coming down for the Washington State series?
I am. I don't know if it'll be opening day, but perhaps that weekend.
Gotcha. Well, hopefully the weather holds up, man. I'm nervous. I'm checking every like 6 hours. I'm checking the weather to kind of see what the latest projections are, because the last couple days or last few days have been pretty good weather here in Fayetteville, and I was like, I want to enjoy this, but I just know as soon as they start playing baseball, it'll be 36 degrees and just the worst winds you've ever imagined. But are you going to Arlington also?
I am going to Arlington. That one's kind of tricky because I want to fly back. I work an 8 to 5 job, so I've got to be back on Monday. So I'm just trying to line up the flights, but I'm definitely going to be there for at least 2 days of that. I got to see my fellow Midwest teams that you alluded to earlier, and I know Arkansas doesn't really identify with that, but in my mind, they're close enough. You guys are all I got in the SEC with Missouri.
If you get hit with tornadoes, you're in the Midwest. That's kind of the way I view it. So I feel like Arkansas's earned their right. We're a Midwest baseball program. But yeah, I like that the Arlington schedule lines up. I mean, could not have worked out more flawlessly for Arkansas, which I think they did on purpose, because obviously they might have the biggest fan base there. Get the night games on Friday, Saturday, then the getaway day. You got the early day on Sunday, so we'll be able to get out of there pretty quick. But speaking of Arkansas, so of course, you think they're going to be pretty good, which is wouldn't say a hot take. Arkansas as a program has accomplished a lot here lately. One of the more talented teams in the country. But when you make that leap and say this team's going to win the national title, is it more along the lines of this program is just kind of due? DVH has accomplished pretty much everything you can accomplish as a college baseball coach, except win the big one. It's just a matter of time. Or are you more viewing it from this team has been pitching at an elite level for several years now, and we've seen this team have good offense, but you think the offense is going to catch up? Or is it kind of a combination of both of those schools of thought, I guess?
I think it's a perfect storm. You look at Arkansas the last really 7 years since that infamous 2018 College World Series finals, which now that I think about it, I don't think Arkansas even played in, so I don't even know why I bring it up. But since then, I think that they've had a couple teams where you think, okay, this is the year. And again, it feels like this is the year. But I think the kind of underlying thing that people are almost afraid to bring up is just Dave Van Horn's age. He's not, knocking on the doorstep or anything. But the reality is that every year that goes by, he gets closer to, at least from an outside looking in, probably considering retirement. And I don't think he wants to retire without winning a big one. But, when you have two train tracks, eventually they're going to cross each other. It feels like, I don't want to say now or never for Arkansas, but it feels like the perfect storm for Arkansas. And when you talk about having the best pitching in probably America right now, and an offense where you return enough pieces, and frankly, the offense has been a letdown lately. But it feels like if they just get a little bit better this year and they complement that pitching just enough, this is a team that, again, has all those perfect pieces. But I do worry, because we've said that before with Arkansas, but it feels like it just feels like the perfect time.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you mentioned the offense. It's not like it has to, Arkansas has to all of a sudden go from a bottom 5 SEC offense to a top 1 SEC offense. I agree. It's not going to take like them moving mountains. I just think they gotta kind of get back closer to competing with some of those Tennessees and A&Ms and even the LSUs of the world. But obviously the postseason results the last couple of years, you know how it is in sports. You could go to the national championship like 4 years in a row then if you lose your home regional the next year, you're a choker and you were never going to win in the postseason. So Arkansas, we're kind of dealing with that narrative now. Hell, even in our own fan base, where it's really hard for people. It's a what have you done late for me lately? What have you done for me lately kind of league where it's really hard for people to get past 2 home regional losses in a row. And of course, it also comes in years where you had as many regular season SEC wins as anyone. And so on paper, it didn't really make any sense. Do you feel like there's anything that Arkansas can do in the regular season that'll really sell everyone else nationally? Obviously, guys like you and I, we're going to be using every win they have to kind of justify, hey, Steve told you this team's awesome. They're going to win the title. But do you think nationally, because I think a lot of people kind of view it through that lens, that people that like Arkansas, they're like, oh, good pitching staff, love DVH, love Matt Hobbs, but I can't quite get over this postseason thing. Do you think there's anything in the regular season Arkansas can accomplish to maybe dispel some of that, or maybe get some people to think, all right, this team's a little bit different than the last couple they've had?
I think that when we look at the last couple Arkansas teams, I think back to even 2022, when they made it to Omaha and they came in third overall, and then they ended up going to North Carolina for that super regional. That team, they tailed off at kind of the right time for people to say, you know what, there's Arkansas again. I don't want to ride with them. So I think if they can overcome that. Now the difficulty with that is that the schedule does not set up nicely that time of year this year. So I think what we might see with Arkansas is they start off sizzling hot. Everybody starts to buy in just with a weaker conference schedule. Of course, it's the SEC, so even a weak SEC slate at the beginning is different than the strongest you can have in some other conferences. But they're going to start off, you would think, pretty favorably. But then, I don't have the exact list in front of me. I think there's Texas, Florida, A&M, Tennessee is either the last or second to last series of the year. That stretch is going to be very tough, and I think we're going to really learn a lot about Arkansas. You and I, maybe not, because I'm not changing. I'm bought in, but everybody else nationally might learn a lot about that Arkansas team, good or bad. And if it's bad, I still think that Arkansas has a chance to be in that hosting conversation, but then maybe they have to go on the road for a super regional. That's just the way the SEC is. And that's kind of what separated some previous Arkansas teams, at least in terms of setting up the postseason picture. So when you think about the regular season, I would think that would be kind of where the hot dogs are made, per se.
Really, until you started just talking about it right then, it didn't really hit me that there's a very obvious path here where Arkansas beats Tennessee 2 out of 3. They go to Baton Rouge. They beat LSU 2 out of 3. They come back home. They sweep Texas, and they're just like crushing number 1 team in the country. And then they choke again in the regional. Like it actually kind of sets up perfectly that way. But I agree, because you mentioned 2022. That is kind of what Arkansas did, where they went into, I believe it was the final 2 weekends of the regular season, where it was like, all right, is this team going to be a national seed, or are they just going to host a regional? Are they going to be in that? And then they end up missing out on all of it, end up having to just go completely on the road. And I feel like for that team, it kind of worked because it built a little bit of that nobody believes in us against the world mentality, where the last couple teams probably had too many people believing in them. So you and I, we have our spin already, where if Arkansas maybe goes 16-14 in SEC play, maybe it's a little disappointing. We're going to be like, this is what this team needed. They needed some of that adversity. They needed to, to be hungry a little bit. I like that. So they released the preseason all SEC teams the other day, and Gabe Gackle was on it. Christian Fouch is on it as a reliever. I guess Zach Root was also on it. Every list I check, there's a different Arkansas pitcher on the list. Vital She's has been on a few, but no position players, which is interesting. There's 26 position players, no Arkansas Razorbacks, which, when you're coming off the offensive season Arkansas came off of, it's not really something you can be too upset about. But if there were an Arkansas player or two that you feel like we're going to change that by the end of the year and would be some of the better position players in the country, is there anybody that sticks out to you there?
Well, Kendall Diggs has been around what feels like for 20 years now. And Vahiva, I think I screwed up like half the time. Vahiva Aloy is certainly somebody that was just electric last year. Even I think he had his fair amount of slumps, but there was still some times where he was just an electric player to watch. And those kind of players make a difference when the team is just a little bit better. The guys who grab all the headlines and make people tune in. But a player that, and you didn't even ask this, maybe it's coming later on, a player that I'm really intrigued to watch is Cam Kojal coming in from Vandy. He's not somebody who I don't think is going to be a first-team SEC guy. And who knows, he may not even start. I know you guys have a lot of controversies about first and second base and who's going to play where. But he's somebody that I'm really intrigued to watch. Maybe a second team, third team kind of guy, maybe an honorable mention. But if he makes a difference, that's a difference that makes a difference. And I think that he's in the right position at Arkansas. he's definitely more of an Arkansas guy than a Vanderbilt guy. So I just want to shout him out. I don't know if he's going to be making a huge impact right away, but he's going to be somebody at the end of the year you think at least he's better here than he was at Vandy.
Yeah, no, Kojal's an interesting one because I think, you view him the way a lot of people did, where like when he committed to Arkansas, it was like that was one of the biggest additions Arkansas made in the offseason. A lot of national guys kind of circled that one. Hey, that's a big one. And in this fall, it just didn't happen. Like he just didn't hit that well. I think he hit around 200 in the fall. He was kind of battling with Nolan Souza there at second base. Nolan Souza is kind of, in my opinion, one of the best kept secrets in college baseball, where I just think like the raw tools are starting to take over with that kid. I mean, he's got the speed, the strength. He looks the part. I mean, he looks very similar to Fayetteville Aloy. They're building those Hawaiians different these days. They're massive Hawaiians. I didn't know that existed. And so I think right away it was clear, okay, Kojal's not going to beat this guy out. He's not going to be the second baseman. But I think first base DH is still very much in the cards for him. And I think the Arkansas is kind of waiting for Kojal to step up and take it. He's hit a lot better here since they reached after Christmas break in the spring. And so it seems like it's kind of the runway is cleared for him to step up and maybe fill in there at first base, or if not, get some DH starts as well. You definitely have to have dudes in the SEC. And I think this Arkansas team, if you just look at the last couple of years, I've always told a bunch of people that I feel like they've accumulated a lot of pretty good guys. Just, decent hitters that you feel good about in your lineup, but are not necessarily guys that pitching staffs are fearing. And I feel like Fayetteville Aloy certainly has that type of potential. I think Nolan Souza has that type of potential. And Brent Iredale, a third baseman, is another one that I think definitely is going to give Arkansas a little bit of that dynamic power in the lineup that we really just haven't seen the last couple of years. You also need dudes on the mound. And when you look around the SEC, I don't think there's like a Paul Skeens or a Hagen Smith, even like a guy that's just a clear top 5 pick, no doubt about it. There's obviously always going to be really good arms in the SEC, but I was looking at it. I think the Witherspoon kid at Oklahoma is the highest rated like draft prospect in the SEC. And of course you got Ryan Prager, who had a great year for A&M. Definitely a Friday night guy and a guy you need to worry about, but he's not necessarily one of those, like, you got to clear your schedule to watch Ryan Prager pitch. Is there an arm in the SEC at Arkansas or anywhere where you're like, feel like they're going under the radar, I think could be maybe one of those guys where it's like, hey, you got to tune in and watch this guy pitch?
Well, it's a good thing I'm here. I think it's Zach Root. You guys talk about all the great pitchers you have coming back, and obviously Beetlejuice coming in as well. But I really enjoyed watching Zach Root at ECU. He grew the hair out, and then he kind of cut it, and that mattered how he played. I don't really know how that worked for him. But he's somebody that I really enjoyed watching at ECU, on an ECU team that struggled in their own right last year compared to their own standards. So if I had to peg somebody who, again, you look at all these preseason teams and they all have a different combination of Arkansas pitchers, but he's somebody that I really enjoy watching. And then another guy, actually just still sticking with Arkansas, I picked Will McIntyre last year as kind of a dart throw for dark horse SEC pitcher of the year. I love watching Will McIntyre play. I think he's definitely developed into a role now where he's probably not going to be the star and you don't have to be afraid of him. But in the right position, I really, really enjoy watching Will McIntyre come in and shut somebody down. So while that's not a Paul Skeens level player, and he's been in college, 18 years now, so he's on his 3rd doctorate. But Will McIntyre is somebody that I really enjoy watching.
Yeah, DVH threw a little shot at Will McIntyre the other day, talking, oh yeah, he's back for year number 16 or whatever, and threw him a nice little shot. But no, Will McIntyre, friend of the program, he's awesome, man. And he's one of those guys where the fan base at Arkansas is kind of always they're always more intrigued by the new shiny toys, the young guys that, like Hunter Dietz, for example, who is going to be that good. I really do. I'm a huge believer in Hunter Dietz. Has only thrown, I think, 1 collegiate inning. Everyone's like really obsessed with him and can't wait to see what he looks like. But at the end of the day, you're going to need those dudes like Will McIntyre to come in and get big outs. And for a guy like him who's started games, closed games, middle relief, he's done literally everything. And so having his experience is definitely big. When you just look at overall rotations in the SEC, so I'm trying my best not to like hype up this Arkansas rotation too much, because this time last year, I was telling everybody, Hagen Smith, of course, he's going to be awesome. And I was like, Mason Molina, best transfer in the country. Brady Tigert, he's going to be a top 3 round guy, like best rotation you've ever seen. And it didn't exactly materialize that way. Obviously, Hagen Smith was very good, but Arkansas had a lot of inconsistency. You look at it on paper again this year, Gabe Gackle kind of is blue chip as a blue chip prospect gets. You feel pretty good about him. And then you bring in arguably the top 2 transfer portal arms in the country in Root and Beidelshees. And so on paper, Arkansas has as good of a rotation as you can imagine. When you look around the SEC, it's really rare that a team has 3 really proven pieces in the rotation already. A lot of times it's, hey, we're moving this guy from closer to starter, or this transfer from, JUCO or whatever is coming in. When you look around the SEC outside of Arkansas, is there a rotation that really sticks out to you where you're like, hey, this team has the pieces, it all kind of lines up, this is going to be a rotation to be not to be trifled with?
It's tough to completely bank on something without talking about expectations. But when I look at LSU, they have shades of that with Anthony Ianson coming in from UC San Diego, and they get Chase Shores, or that might be a screw up, but they got one of those guys coming back that's been there forever that throws like 96. So they have the pieces in place. And you talk about, well, you got to plug and play. So there's nothing exactly perfect like what Arkansas has. You talk about Ryan Prager at A&M, and Vanderbilt brings back a couple guys that were okay last year. But there's nothing that's set up as well as what Arkansas has. I think Auburn brings in Cade Fisher from Florida, so that's an exciting piece that they have. But then again, it falls off after that. So when you're looking for like an Arkansas comparison, I know that's not what you asked because there's nobody in the country that's like Arkansas on the mound, but there's really nobody that is like, oh, they're a piece away from competing with Arkansas on the mound right now. Of course, things can fall off the handle. Arkansas knows that as good as anybody. But right now, there's nobody that's really on that level yet that I would be too concerned about. You talked about the Witherspoon kids at Oklahoma, Malachi and Kyson there going on Friday and Saturday, and then you throw in Cam Johnson from LSU on Sunday, perhaps. That's a strictly all potential there. We've seen the Witherspoon guys struggle with command, but they throw 100 miles an hour. Cam Johnson was highly coveted out of high school, didn't make an immediate impact at LSU. Now he's at Oklahoma. So if there's anybody out there, I would say maybe Oklahoma and LSU to watch. LSU, of course, is LSU, but Oklahoma is one that I think they might sneak up on people, but it's all if the right things click on the mound.
Yeah, I mean, when you in Oklahoma very well could have the single best arm in the SEC, and so when you have someone that good on Friday nights, it's not like you have to be that great on the other days. And so, and like you said, it does kind of seem like most teams are in that category. I mean, hell, like Arkansas last year, where you've got Hagan on Friday, and then you kind of piece it together. I think Hog fans experience that and think it's like it's a unique issue to them. It's really hard to find 3 guys that you feel really confident about that can give you 5-6 innings overall. But just overall, when you're thinking about teams and talent, it feels like the general consensus, just based on all the rankings, all the projections, is that the tier 1 in the SEC is A&M, LSU, Tennessee, and Arkansas. In some form or fashion, those 4 teams are kind of a tier above everyone else. Do you feel like that's accurate?
I do think that's accurate. I think Florida kind of has an argument to be right on the fringe there. I would probably put them a tick below. But Florida's another one where they're just loaded in terms of talent, and it's if the right pieces click. They, of course, lost a lot last year. It's not easy to replace Jack Caglione, as it turns out. Georgia has a ton of talent coming from the portal, so I'd put them just a tick below Florida. But at the end of the year, things can, of course, flip-flop there to the point where I wouldn't be surprised, so it's worth mentioning. But outside of that, I do agree that is definitely tier 1. I'd give a shout-out to Texas. The more I look into them, the more I like them. But again, how will that transition from the Big 12 to the SEC go? A lot of you SEC guys like to say it's going to be impossible, mostly for Oklahoma, that gets said. But I think it'll be a little bit smoother than maybe some will expect. But I don't think they're quite in tier 1 yet.
Yeah, Texas is a team that's very interesting to me. I mean, of course, you're making the transition. You never know. I think they were picked 8th by the SEC coaches in the league, which 8th in the SEC means you're probably a top 15 to 20 team in the country. But I saw that and I was kind of like, that just feels low to me. Obviously, Schlossnagle year 1, we don't really know what it's going to look like, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say they're going to be pretty damn good, and he's going to accelerate that rebuild process for sure. They're an intriguing team to me. I also didn't realize Cade Fisher was at Auburn. Cade Fisher was a guy like I used to bet against him when he was pitching for Florida, but now I feel like he's gone from like overrated to underrated in a weird way. But like at Auburn, I feel like he's going to be a really awesome pickup. I did not realize that's where he landed up. Auburn loves to overachieve, man. They're a team that no matter what their record is, I never look forward to playing Auburn and Butch Thompson over there. I got to tee you up because I know you cover more than just the SEC. Us over here in Arkansas and really in any SEC school, we feel so pretentious. Like we're the only conference that good baseball happens in. And to an extent, like there's a reason for why we feel that way. But of course, there's always great baseball played around the country. In fact, I think the last time a non-SEC team won the title, it was beating Arkansas and Oregon State. Has there been another non-SEC team since then?
I think you're spot on. That checks out to me. We've had Vandy, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Tennessee.
Yeah, it just rolls on. So maybe we're the wrong fan base to be talking and being like, oh, the SEC is so cool because the last time an SEC team lost in the title game, it was us. But if you had to say there's a non-SEC team that's a real threat to win the title, who would that be necessarily?
You got to start with Virginia. They're ranked in the top 5 for a reason. They returned pretty much everybody. Whole band back together for the most part, and their pitching gets a little bit better. Evan Blanco's a for real ace. I kind of doubted him for a little while there, and then, okay, this kid's really good. Then you look at the other ACC teams, Duke, North Carolina. I just casually mentioned Duke there. They haven't been to Omaha, but Chris Pollard's a fantastic head coach out there. North Carolina returns everybody except Honeycutt and Dalton Pence, and that's really it that they lose. Those two teams stand out to me, Virginia, North Carolina, and then Stanford. If Sasaki becomes good, I would say that they're kind of a dart throw out of the ACC as well. Oklahoma State is going to be tough if they develop any pitching. I know you guys know them well. Thank you for the greatest regional of all time. And then I think that Oregon is one to keep tabs on as well. You kind of forget that they're in the Big Ten now, but of course you remember the Pac-12 doesn't exist, so where are they? But they're a top 12 or so team pretty much everywhere, and they return everybody from that College Station Super Regional where they were pretty close to coming to Omaha. I don't think they won any games there, but you can talk about the Heat, and they were a national runner-up. A&M was for a reason. I really like Oregon this year as well.
Yeah, man, it's gonna be a fun year of college baseball. I'm gonna put you on the spot here real quick. Do you have a preseason Golden Spikes pick?
And that's so tough. I'm in a college baseball fantasy league, and I took Drew Burress with my second overall pick. So I want Drew Burress to win it. I think if I had to throw some cash down, I'd go with Jace Laviolette just because he's the favorite. We know what he's going to do. If he can get rid of those strikeouts just a little bit, I think he'll run away with it. But I really want to see what Drew Burress does at Georgia Tech.
Gotcha. Yeah, I saw D1 Baseball had they always rank the position, every single position, and they had Burress over Laviolette in the outfield, which, like, you know, they're both tremendous players, like top 5 guys. I just thought that was interesting, where I was like, oh, because I just kind of in my brain I was like, Laviolette's got to be the number one. Like I don't follow the entire country that much. I try and keep tabs where I can, but I just assumed Laviolette would be like the preseason player of the year everywhere. So seeing Burress up there, I was like, oh man, I forgot he's back, and yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch it all play out, man. So appreciate you. Hey, appreciate you for joining the show, man. Appreciate you for being an ally of the Bombastic Podcast. We'll definitely have to keep tabs, man. And hey, if you end up being in Fayetteville, man, let me know. We'll chop it up. We'll hang out at Bomb. We'll freeze together, I guess. And we'll Razorback fans will guide you throughout the city. They are good about that. A lot of SEC fan bases become travel agents whenever you are going to their city. They start giving you all these recommendations. You got to go here, but we'll give you the good rundown, man. So appreciate you for joining me, and everybody go follow Noah on on Twitter, wherever one of the better college baseball follows you will find on Twitter. If you like just keeping up with the action, I know a lot of Hog fans do like to keep tabs at least on other SEC teams and just the nation overall, and just really just love baseball. And man, if you love baseball, Noah's a must follow for sure. So appreciate you for being here on the Bombastic Podcast. Hope everyone enjoyed, and we will be back later today for some scrimmage action, and we'll have the takes for all that. So have a good one, Noah, and we will see you in Fayetteville next week.
Appreciate it, Andrew.